They buried the first body at midnight, without a prayer, without a name, without a marker. The second went down before dawn. By the third, the men stopped whispering and started humming work songs to drown out the sound of shovels striking frozen clay. In the morning, the town of Briar Hollow woke to clean streets and quiet porches, like nothing had happened. Only Dr. Elias Whitford knew where the silence came from. Only he counted the graves. Stay with me, because this is the night a doctor chose truth over his own safety. Subscribe and share if you believe stories like this shouldn't be buried twice. The cart rolled in before sunrise, its wheels sighing through ruts still wet from last night's rain. Dr. Elias Whitford heard it before he saw it. The slow, reluctant creak that made his scalp prickle. He stepped out onto his porch with his black bag half latched and his shirt only half buttoned. The wind carried the sour tang that had haunted him for 3 weeks. River water, lye, and the sweet rot of fever sweat. He knew that smell now, the way a sailor knows a storm. 2 men in oilskin coats jumped down from the cart. "No need to trouble yourself, Doc," the taller one said, tipping a hat that had never seen Sunday church. "Just some refuse from the boarding house." "Refuse doesn't twitch under canvas," Elias said. The shorter man shifted. "You don't want this trouble." Elias stepped closer and lifted the edge of the tarp. A boy, no more than 15, lay on his side, lips cracked blue, fingernails caked with river mud. The eyes were half open, and for an instant Elias thought he saw the velvet flit of a dream over them. Reflex made him reach for a pulse, but he already knew. The boy's belly was drawn tight, breath long escaped. On the skin of his wrists, Elias saw the telltale ridgeline of cramps. It was in the wells then. It was in the water. "Name?" Elias asked. "Does it matter?" the tall man said. "It matters to his mother," Elias said. "And to my ledger." The shorter one swallowed. "Jeremiah Pike, from the mill. They're paying extra to keep it quiet." "They?" Elias asked, though he knew the answer. "Council," the tall one said. "And Mr. Roebuck. Folks panic. The mill shuts. Mill shuts. Winter kills more than any fever. That's the math." Elias stared at the tarp. "He died 2 hours ago," he said, more to the boy than to the men. "You carried him like cargo." "Cargo doesn't spread fear," the tall one said. "Look, Doc, be reasonable. You want to help? Pretend you didn't see us." The words landed like mud on Elias's boots. He remembered the first case, a washerwoman from the river cottages, dead in a day. Then an infant who wouldn't stop crying until he didn't cry at all. Then came the boarding house, the mill dormitory, the fishermen out by the bend. Stomachs knotted, mouths dry as tinder, skin slackening like old fruit. He'd begged the council for a town notice. Boil your water, burn your rags, keep to clean wells. They'd thanked him, then printed handbills about seasonal egg and prudence in gossip. Elias slid the tarp fully back. "You'll take him to the potter's field," he said. "You will not touch the town cemetery. You will wash the cartboards with lye. You will burn the clothes." He paused. "And you will not come back to me with another boy." The tall man's jaw worked. "Orders are orders." "So are facts," Elias said, and reached for the cart's shaft. "Help me lift him. He leaves like a person, not a bundle." They lifted in a clumsy rhythm, the boy's limbs light as kindling. Elias felt the hollowness in the boy's shoulders, and the slick of night sweat, still damp at the neck. He murmured the only prayer he could remember from his mother. a thready braid of words that had not visited his mouth since he was a child. The shorter man made the sign his father had taught him in secret. The tall one looked away. As the cart turned toward the east road, a door opened across the lane. Mrs. Keene, the boarding-house owner, squinted into the gray morning. "Doctor?" she called, her voice snared between curiosity and fear. "You're out early." "Boil your water," Elias said. "Tell your tenants to do the same. Full boil. 5 minutes." Her face pinched. "We've always drawn from the pump. My husband—" "Boil," Elias repeated, and softened it with a nod that tasted like apology. He watched her door close, then let the silence sit beside him a moment. The town was waking. A dog barked. The bakery stove coughed its first smoke. From the mill's bell tower, a single note fell and broke into the morning like a chipped mug. Men would go to work. Girls would carry baskets to the river. Mothers would send their children out with slices of bread and promises of dusk. And under it all, the river would slide its cold hand into the wells, and the wells would lift that hand to every mouth. Elias went back inside, latched his bag, and sat at his desk. The ledger lay open to 3 columns: name, age, notes. His handwriting was a map of declining hope. He dipped his pen and wrote, Jeremiah Pike, 15, mill boy, severe cramps, sunken eyes, cold extremities, deceased pre-dawn, immediate burial ordered. Then he added, against the quiet threat of that word ordered, boil notice refused by counsel. Risk, extreme. He blotted the ink and stared at the page until the letters blurred. He heard again the council chamber 3 days ago, Mayor Greeley's smile that fit like a mask, Alderman Choate's gold ring tapping the table, Mr. Roebuck's voice, genteel, final, calling the fever an unbecoming rumor. Unbecoming. Elias had walked home with a taste of iron in his mouth, wondering when truth had become improper table talk. A knock rattled his door. He opened it to find Anna Lark, the midwife, cheeks wind-bitten, gray hair roped tight. "I brought tincture," she said, lifting a basket, "and news that isn't fit for a basket." "Come," Elias said. She set the basket down and pulled her shawl tighter. 3 more at the river cottages. 2 won't last till noon. He closed his eyes. I asked for a boil notice. And they asked the printer for silence, Anna said. Roebuck gives him good contracts. Paper listens to money. We can post our own, Elias said. We can nail them to doors. And have them torn down by nightfall? Anna's mouth thinned. No, Elias. If this town is to hear, it must be louder than a nail. He looked at the basket, at the small amber bottles glinting like trapped sunlight. What are you asking me to do? Anna's eyes met his. The truth doesn't whisper and survive. You know that as well as I do. He felt the question settle in his chest, heavy, inevitable. Out the window, a group of mill boys hurried past, laughter snapping like flags in the wind. One of them ran with both hands on his cap, careless, invincible. He could not tell which face belonged to Jeremiah yesterday. Tonight, Elias said. At the square. If the council won't speak, we will. Anna nodded once. I'll bring the mothers. Let's see if the town can ignore that. As she left, Elias drew a clean sheet of paper and wrote at the top, in block letters, that fought against his own neatness. Boil your water. Keep the sick apart. Burn soiled rags. Do not draw from the river pump. He underlined each command until the pen scratched the wood beneath. He pinned the notice inside his window. The glass caught his reflection, tired, ink-smudged, stubborn, and threw it back at the street. Somewhere beyond the square, the river kept moving. Somewhere beneath its surface, something small and merciless multiplied. Elias blew out his lamp and tightened his coat. "No more bundles," he said to the empty room. "No more midnight carts." Outside, the day had brightened without warmth. He stepped into it like a man wading into cold water, braced for the current, one hand on the truth he meant to carry all the way to the other shore. By noon, Briar Hollow looked like any other market town. Horses tied to hitch posts flicked their tails at flies. Women in aprons haggled over flour. The bell from the blacksmith's shed clanged steady as a heartbeat. To a stranger, it was the picture of order. To Dr. Elias Whitford, it was a stage set, painted wood hiding rotten beams. The council met that afternoon in the upper room of the old courthouse. The air inside was thick with cigar smoke, and the curtains were drawn against the sun. Mayor Greeley sat at the head, his hair combed flat with too much oil, his smile wide enough to show the gap where a molar had gone missing. To his right was Alderman Choate, gold watch chain glinting every time he tapped the table. And to his left sat Mr. Roebuck, the mill owner, gloves folded neatly on his knee, a man who never seemed to sweat. "Dr. Whitford," Greeley said, spreading his arms as though to welcome a friend. "We hear you've been busy this morning, busy with words." Elias set his black bag down on the long oak table. "I buried a boy before dawn, Jeremiah Pike, 15. He died of cholera." Choate coughed into his hand. "Of ague," he corrected smoothly. "That's what our statement says." "It's cholera," Elias said. "The cramps, the sunken eyes, the speed of it. You know the signs as well as I do." Mr. Roebuck's voice slid into the air, like oil on water. "Names don't matter, Doctor. What matters is calm. If you cry plague in a town like ours, the mill workers flee. The harvest rots. Trade dries up. Panic will kill more than any fever." Elias leaned forward. "Panic won't foul a well. Panic won't fill a grave. Disease will. And it is spreading through your mill houses already." The mayor's smile faltered for the first time. "And what do you propose?" "Tell the people the truth," Elias said. "Print a notice. Tell them to boil their water. Close the river pumps until it's safe." Choate clicked his tongue. "Boiling water? Shutting pumps? Doctor, do you know what that sounds like to a common ear? It sounds like poison. It sounds like their own leaders feeding them filth. Better to keep them steady." "Better for your ledgers," Elias snapped. "Not for their children." The room froze. The only sound was the creak of Roebuck's gloves as he slid them back on. His eyes, pale and calm, fixed on Elias. "You tread close to disrespect." "I tread close to graves," Elias shot back. Mayor Greeley tapped the table twice, regaining his smile. "Dr. Whitford, we value your medical zeal, but we must balance medicine with prudence. We've decided to classify the matter as seasonal illness, temporary, unremarkable. We ask that you cooperate." Elias's chest burned. "You are asking me to lie." "We are asking you to protect this town's lifeblood," Roebuck said softly. "Work is survival. Fear is ruin. Which would you choose?" Elias looked at their faces, smooth, polished, untouched by sweat or sleepless nights. He thought of the Pike boy's cracked lips, the washerwoman's lifeless child, Anna Lark's trembling hands. He thought of the cart rolling out of town with its silent cargo. "I choose truth," Elias said. The silence stretched until it snapped. Mayor Greeley leaned back, smile re-nailed into place. Then choose it quietly, Doctor. Quiet truth is sometimes the kindest truth. Elias gathered his bag. Quiet truth is buried truth. He left the courthouse with the smell of cigars clinging to his coat like rot. Outside, the afternoon sun poured over the square, and life went on. Children chasing each other, dogs barking, vendors shouting prices. But Elias saw the shadows behind it all. He saw the sickness moving, unseen, faster than lies. As he crossed the square, Anna Lark met him, with her shawl pulled tight. "Well?" she asked. "They've decided it's seasonal illness," Elias said bitterly. "They want silence." Anna's lips pressed thin. "Then we'll give them noise." She placed a stack of handbills in his hands. Bold, black letters scrawled across the top. "Boil your water. Keep the sick apart. Burn contaminated clothes." "They can tear down papers," she said, "but they can't stop voices." Elias looked around the square. He saw mothers with baskets, mill boys with coal dust on their faces, old men leaning on canes, faces that trusted the council more than they trusted themselves. He tightened his grip on the handbills. "Tonight," he said, "we'll nail them up at the square. Let the whole town see." Anna nodded. "And if they come to tear them down?" "Then we'll stand beside them," Elias said, "until someone listens." The square emptied by sundown. Stalls shuttered, dogs wandered for scraps, and the mill bell tolled the end of labor. The streets filled with the quiet ache of tired feet. By lantern light, Briar Hollow became another place entirely, a place of whispers and shutters drawn too quickly. Elias waited until the last wagon creaked past before stepping from his doorway. He carried the stack of handbills beneath his coat, nails and hammer in a pouch that slapped against his hip. Anna Lark met him by the pump in the square, her face pale in the lantern's halo. Two young mothers stood with her, shawls wrapped tight, children clinging at their skirts. "They volunteered," Anna said. "Both lost someone this week. They want the town to know." Elias looked into their eyes. He saw the hollow places left by grief. He gave each woman a handbill. "Then let's begin." The first nail rang loud against the courthouse post. The sound echoed like a gunshot through the square. The mothers flinched, but Elias struck again, harder, until the handbill lay flat against the wood. Its words shouted in the lantern glow, "Boil your water. Keep the sick apart. Burn soiled rags. Avoid the river pump." Anna moved to the bakery door, hammering her own notice. The mothers pinned theirs to the mill gate and the tavern wall. One by one, the square filled with warnings. Paper flapped in the night wind like pale flags of rebellion. Elias hammered the last sheet to the pump itself. He leaned close, breathing hard. "If they won't listen in daylight," he said, "let them wake to the truth." But the truth was not left alone for long. A voice cracked across the square. "What in God's name do you think you're doing?" 3 men approached, lanterns bobbing, shadows stretching long. At their center was Alderman Choate, his watch chain glinting even in the dim. Behind him, 2 constables dragged clubs along their belts. "Removing lies," Choate said smoothly, plucking a handbill from the bakery door. He crumpled it between thick fingers. "You spread fear like plague itself." Elias stepped forward. "Fear doesn't fill graves. Disease does. If you cared for this town, you'd print these words yourselves." Choate's eyes narrowed. "If you cared, Doctor, you'd hold your tongue. How many families will starve if the mill closes? How many children will freeze this winter if their fathers run? And how many children will rot if they drink that water," Elias shot back. Anna stepped beside him, her voice sharp. "You bury bodies at night. You pay men to haul carts out of town. You already know the truth." The constables shifted uneasily. The mothers pulled their children close, but did not leave. A hush spread over the square. Curious eyes glinting from cracked shutters, shadows watching from porches. The town was listening, even if it dared not speak. Choate tore another notice from the wall, his jaw tight. "This ends tonight. You want to play martyr doctor? Do it alone. But do not drag this town into panic." He scattered the crumpled paper into the dirt and turned. The constables followed, though one glanced back, his hand brushing the handle of a still-nailed notice as if tempted to leave it. Elias stood breathing hard, hammer still in hand. Around him, the women did not move. Anna's voice broke the silence. "Tomorrow there will be more paper, more voices. They can't silence every wall, Elias." He nodded slowly. "Then tomorrow we speak louder." In the hush that followed, a cough rang out from the far end of the street. Wet, ragged, unmistakable. Heads turned. Another cough answered from a window above, then a child's cry. The square filled with a sound more damning than words, the sound of sickness moving through the night. Elias closed his eyes. "It's already here," he whispered. By morning, the coughs had multiplied. A line of pale-faced women gathered outside the apothecary, clutching children limp in their arms. The mill bell rang late, its tone broken, as men argued in the yard about whether to risk the shift. The smell of lie and sickness hung thick as fog. Elias moved from door to door with his bag, hands raw from washing. He treated the same cramps, the same sunken eyes, the same fever that burned without fire. He marked names in his ledger until the pages blurred, and still they came. At the river cottages, he found 3 bodies laid side by side, eyes already closed with coins. Anna Lark knelt over a 4th, a girl no older than 12, her thin chest rising in frantic jerks. "We've boiled what we can," Anna said, sweat running into her eyes. "But the pump water is all they have. It keeps coming back." "Because the river feeds it," Elias said bitterly. He tried to steady the girl's breathing, whispering words half prayer, half diagnosis. When her chest stilled, he closed her eyes himself. The mothers wailed. Their voices rose thin and sharp across the cottages. It was not the sound of hysteria. It was the sound of truth breaking through walls of silence. By noon, the council could no longer ignore it. Elias was summoned again to the courthouse. This time the room smelled not of cigars, but of fear. Mayor Greeley's smile was gone. Alderman Choate's chain trembled as he tapped the table. Mr. Roebuck stood, gloves still on his hands, though his knuckles shone white beneath them. "You've stirred panic," Greeley began, his voice strained. "The streets are full of your handbills. Families are refusing to send men to the mill. Bread lines grow longer by the hour. This is chaos." "This is cholera," Elias said. His voice cracked from exhaustion but carried steel beneath it. "And it doesn't care about your ledgers. It will take your mill workers just as it took Jeremiah Pike." Choate slammed a palm on the table. "You will stop naming the dead." Elias leaned forward, fire in his tired eyes. "I will name every one, because you bury them nameless at night, as if silence makes them less real." Roebuck's calm mask flickered. "We can still contain this. If the papers do not reach Springfield, if the trains continue—" "Containment!" Elias barked. "Look outside your window. Listen to the coughing in your own streets. It is already beyond your walls. You hid it until it was too late. For a moment no one spoke. The weight of truth pressed heavy in the room. Then Mayor Greeley sagged back in his chair, his voice small. If we admit it now, we damn this town. You damn it more by lying, Elias said. The door burst open. A constable stumbled in, face pale, breath ragged. Sir, he gasped, eyes darting from counsel to doctor. The mill yard, it's begun. Men collapsing at their posts, women screaming. They say it's the plague. Silence swallowed the room. The council's lies had finally found their own voices, shouted through the streets. Elias picked up his bag. Now you will see, he said, not because you choose to, but because the town has no more strength to pretend. He strode past them into the sunlight. Outside, the square seethed with noise, mothers crying, men shouting, shutters slamming. A cart rattled past, piled with bodies covered in sheets. This time, it was not hidden at night. It rolled openly through the heart of Briar Hollow, and no one could look away. Elias felt the shift. Fear was no longer a whisper. It was a roar, and it demanded to be heard. By dusk, Briar Hollow no longer resembled a town. It was a fevered hive. The mill yard had become a makeshift infirmary. Men sprawled on the ground, their skin gray and eyes glassy. Women soaked cloths in boiling water, pressing them to mouths that could no longer swallow. Horses stamped nervously in their stalls, picking up the scent of death in the air. Elias moved among them, hands blistered from lie, his bag near empty. Anna Lark shouted instructions over the din. Boil everything. Don't touch the sick without washing. Keep the children back. Her voice was fierce, but her shoulders shook with exhaustion. In the square, a crowd gathered, their fear sharpened into rage. Mothers waved handbills high, their ink smudged with tears. Mill boys shouted Jeremiah Pike's name like a battle cry. They hid it, someone yelled. They lied while our children died. The words caught like sparks on dry timber, spreading through the crowd. The council arrived late, carried in carriages as if ceremony could still hold weight. Mayor Greeley tried to climb the courthouse steps, his voice strained. My friends, remain calm. This is a matter of sanitation. A rotten apple struck his chest. Another hit the steps. The crowd roared, drowning him out. Tell the truth, they screamed. You buried them at night. You called it egg. Elias stepped forward, his coat stained, his face lined with sleepless nights. He raised his voice, not polished, not political, but raw. It is cholera. It is in the water, and it will keep killing until you stop lying. A hush cut through the shouting. All eyes turned to him. The words, spoken openly at last, felt like a bell rung at the heart of the town. Boil your water, Elias continued, his voice breaking but steady. Do not draw from the river pump. Burn the rags of the sick. Keep them apart until the fever passes. Listen, if you want your families to live, listen now. The crowd erupted, not in panic, but in desperate action. Women ran for buckets, for kettles, for firewood. Men rushed to smash the handle off the river pump. Children carried notices from door to door, their small hands slapping them against walls. But the council stood frozen. Alderman Choate's face was pale, his gold chain rattling in his hand. Mr. Roebuck stared as if the crowd had turned into something monstrous. Mayor Greeley tried once more to speak, but his voice was drowned in the roar of his own people. For the first time, it was not the council who commanded the square. It was the town itself. Elias felt Anna's hand on his arm. She whispered, "You've broken it." There's silence. It's done. But he knew it wasn't done. Not yet. Too many bodies already lay in carts. Too many wells still ran foul. Too many lies still clung to the air like smoke. And then a scream cut across the square. A woman staggered from the crowd, her child limp in her arms, eyes rolled white. She fell to her knees before Elias. "Save him!" she cried. Elias dropped to the cobblestones, pressing fingers to the boy's neck. No pulse. His throat tightened. He looked up at the faces ringed around him, faces begging, desperate, terrified. He couldn't save them all. He knew that now. But he could give them the truth, and the truth might save what lies could not. He rose, lifting his blood-stained hands toward the council. His voice rang like iron. "This blood is on your silence. No more graves in secret. No more lies. Tonight, the truth belongs to the people." The crowd roared its answer, shaking the windows of Briar Hollow. For the first time, the council flinched. For the first time, Elias saw fear in their eyes, not of disease, but of their own town awakened. Darkness fell heavy on Briar Hollow, but the town did not sleep. Fires burned in every yard as kettles boiled endlessly. The streets echoed with coughing, crying, and the hammer of carpenters building crude stretchers from broken doors. The air carried the sour stench of sickness mixed with smoke. Elias moved like a shadow between houses, stitching together whatever hope he could. Anna Lark stayed at his side, her shawl dark with sweat, her hands raw from scrubbing. Every door they entered carried the same scene: children with sunken eyes, mothers slumped over basins, fathers lying still beneath quilts. By midnight, the church bell rang, not for worship, but as a funeral toll. Its peal came again and again until it felt less like sound and more like the earth itself groaning. In the square, the council gathered under lamplight, ringed by guards. Their voices carried sharp above the noise. "We must restore order," Mayor Greeley shouted, his face red. "This chaos will destroy us faster than the fever." "The fever has already destroyed us," someone yelled from the crowd. Elias stepped forward, exhaustion dragging at his bones. "You had your chance to act. You buried truth with the bodies. Now the people bury their own dead in daylight because of you." Alderman Choate raised his watch chain like a gavel. "Dr. Whitford, you will cease this rabble-rousing. By order of the council, you are—" His words broke under a cough. He staggered, clutching the table. His lips trembled pale, sweat shining on his brow. The crowd gasped as he collapsed to his knees, retching. Silence held for a moment, broken only by his rasping breath. Elias knelt instinctively, fingers at Choate's pulse. The same symptoms, the same fever. "It has reached your council," Elias said grimly. "Even your lies can't protect you." Panic rippled through the guards. Mayor Greeley stumbled backward, eyes wide. Mr. Roebuck gripped the rail of the platform. His calm mask cracked for the first time. "This town is falling apart," Greeley cried. "We must quarantine. Burn the cottages if we must." "No!" Anna's voice cut sharp through the square. She stepped forward, pointing at the crowd. "You will not burn the poor to save the rich. You will not sacrifice their lives for your comfort." The people roared their agreement, a tide of voices swelling against the platform. Mothers thrust sick children into the air for the council to see. Men shouted names of their dead. The guards, unnerved, tightened their grips on batons but did not move forward. Elias stood tall beside Anna, his voice hoarse but unwavering. "The people are not your cattle. They will not be silenced, not tonight. If you want survival, it begins with truth. Admit it. Print the warnings. Give every family the tools to fight, or this town will drown in its own graves. For a long moment, the council said nothing. Only the bell tolled, and the coughing spread like fire through the crowd. Then Mr. Roebuck, pale and sweating, finally spoke. If we admit it now, Springfield will cut us off. Trade gone. Rail gone. We'll be left to starve. Elias met his eyes, steady. Better hunger than death. Better truth than lies. The crowd surged, voices rising like thunder. Truth! 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 The council, ringed by their own people's fury, could no longer hide behind silence. Their power cracked, not with a single word, but with the sound of the town itself demanding what was stolen from it. Elias felt the shift. The night of reckoning had come. The chanting shook the square. Truth, truth, truth. Each cry struck like a hammer against the courthouse walls. The council stood cornered, their own people pressing in from every side. Guards shifted nervously, no longer sure whom they were meant to protect. Mayor Greeley raised his hands, but his voice cracked like thin glass. Please, you must say the word. Anna cut him off, her voice sharp as a blade. Tell them what it is. Greeley's lips trembled. He looked at Choate, but the alderman lay slumped on a bench, shivering in his own fever. He looked to Roebuck, whose gloves were gone, hands white-knuckled on the railing. Roebuck's pale eyes darted over the sea of faces. Workers, mothers, orphans, men who had given their lives to his mill. The mask he had worn for decades cracked in a single breath. It's cholera, Roebuck said. The square went silent. For a heartbeat, the only sound was the hiss of the torches, the cough of the sick, the night wind in the eaves. Elias felt the weight lift and settle at once. The word had finally been spoken. The lie was broken. Roebuck sagged, sweat rolling down his temples. Boil your water. Avoid the pumps. Do what the doctor says. If you want to live. He stopped, breath ragged. If any of us want to live. The crowd erupted, not in chaos this time, but in action. Men surged toward the wells to smash the handles. Women dragged buckets toward fires already roaring in yards. Children carried handbills as if they were banners of war. The square, once paralyzed by silence, now moved with furious, desperate energy. Anna gripped Elias's arm. You forced their hand, she whispered. No, Elias said, his eyes on the people filling the streets. They forced it themselves. All I did was say what they already knew. At the edge of the square, a cart rolled by, another body beneath its canvas. But for the first time, no one looked away. Women crossed themselves, men removed hats, children fell quiet. The town no longer hid its dead. The bell in the church tower rang again, not for mourning, not for secrecy, but as a warning, a call to every home. The truth is here. Protect yourselves. Mayor Greeley tried to regain his voice, shouting for calm, for unity, but his words fell flat. The people no longer looked to him. Their eyes were on Elias, on Anna, on one another. For the first time, Briar Hollow belonged not to its council, but to its people. And beneath the night sky, as the fever raged and bodies burned in pits at the edge of town, the truth stood taller than the lies that had buried it. The days that followed were a blur of smoke and sorrow. Fires burned night and day at the edge of Briar Hollow, reducing soiled rags and the bodies of the dead to ash. The river pump lay in ruins, its handle shattered to splinters by the very men who had once trusted it with their children's thirst. Elias moved like a ghost through the streets, his coat stiff with lye, his hands blistered from boiling water. He saved who could be saved and buried who could not. His ledger filled with names, so many names that the ink bled through the pages. Anna never left his side. She washed, prayed, and held mothers when their children's cries fell silent. Her shawl smelled of smoke, but her eyes burned with iron. "Let them remember this," she whispered once, as they lowered another child into the ground. "Let them never bury truth again." By the third week, the fever began to loosen its grip. The fires slowed, the coughing thinned. The church bell rang fewer times each day. Those who survived carried hollow faces, but they carried life. In the square, the council stood again, but not on the courthouse steps. They stood before their people, heads bowed. Mayor Greeley's voice shook as he read a proclamation. "We failed you. We chose silence when we should have chosen truth. We sought order and profit while you buried your own dead. For this, we ask your forgiveness." The crowd did not cheer. They did not jeer. They simply listened, silent. The weight of grief too heavy for noise. Forgiveness would not come quickly, nor should it. Roebuck, pale and frail from his own brush with the fever, stepped down from the platform and handed Elias a folded paper. Inside was a single line, written in an unsteady hand. "You were right. I pray God spares what we nearly destroyed." Elias tucked it away, though he doubted he would ever read it again. The words of the powerful mattered less now. What mattered were the faces in the square, mothers, fathers, children, who had survived not because of lies, but because of the truth they had wrested from the jaws of silence. That night, Elias closed his ledger. He set it beside the lamp and stared at its heavy cover. So many names inside. So many more that might have been saved had the truth been spoken sooner. He stepped outside into the cool air. The sky stretched dark and endless above Briar Hollow. Fires still burned in the distance, but the stars returned, faint but certain. He let the silence settle. "This town will not forget," he murmured. "Not while I breathe." Anna joined him, her shawl drawn close. Together they looked at the square, where scraps of handbills still fluttered on doors and posts. Their words, once torn down, now clung like scars, a reminder written not on paper, but on the memory of every soul who lived through the epidemic of 1856. Silence buries truth, but truth, though late, though costly, saves what silence would destroy. If this story moved you, share it. Because the dead of Briar Hollow are not here to speak, but we can carry their lesson. Truth must never be buried. Subscribe for more stories that history tried to hide.